Welcome to African Folktales Hub by Chris. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notification. Listen well, my children, for this is a story the river remembers even when people try to forget. In the village of Ikenodo, where the forest bent low and the river Omiaji breathed like a living thing, a child was born on a night of storm. Thunder rolled as if the sky was angry. Rain beat the roofs like drums. When the baby came, he did not cry. He only opened his eyes and stared. The midwives exchanged glances and stepped back. "A child who greets the world in silence is not ordinary," they whispered. The elders said the river must have touched him before birth. His mother, Sua, held him close, begging him to cry, but he did not. His father, Gbagbo, stood apart, his face hard. Outside, the river swelled and climbed its banks, shining under the lightning. Someone said the river was claiming what belonged to it. The baby was named Immel, meaning light, but no one smiled when the name was spoken. Even that night, fear wrapped itself around the boy like a second skin, and the village slept uneasy, knowing something had entered their world. Immel grew, but not like other children. He spoke late, walked slowly, and watched more than he played. When other children laughed, he listened. When they ran, he stood still. People began to notice strange things. Fish became scarce. Nets returned empty. Crops yellowed before harvest. Each loss was followed by whispers. "The river is angry," they said. Some pointed at Immel when they spoke. They called him River's mistake when they thought his mother could not hear. Sua tried to protect him, holding his hand tightly whenever they walked through the village. But fear is stronger than kindness when it spreads. Gbagbo stopped carrying his son on his shoulders. He avoided the boy's eyes. At night, he stared toward the river, as if waiting for it to speak. Immel felt the distance, even if he did not understand it. He slept alone and dreamed of water singing his name. The elders gathered more often, their voices low and serious. Each meeting ended the same way, with eyes turning toward Sua's compound. The river flowed calmly, but everyone knew calm water could still drown a village. Inside his home, Immel learned silence early. Gbagbo's words became sharp like broken shells. "Sit properly," he would snap. "Do not stare like that." When neighbors visited, Gbagbo sent the boy away. Shame lived in the man's chest, heavy and bitter. Sua felt torn in two. She loved her son with the quiet strength of a wounded heart, yet fear pressed on her every day. She washed Immel's clothes at dawn, before others came to the river. She prayed he would one day laugh like other children. But the village watched. Every misfortune became Immel's shadow. When a goat died, someone muttered his name. When rain delayed, eyes turned to his doorway. The boy began to feel smaller, as if the world was squeezing him out. Sometimes he followed the river bank alone. The water felt familiar, gentle, almost welcoming. He would sit on a stone and hum without knowing why. The river answered with soft ripples. Sua saw this once and pulled him away in fear. "Do not go there," she warned. But the river already knew him, and the village was beginning to decide what that knowledge meant. The day Baba Ifalo spoke, the village gathered under the old Iroko tree. He was the priest, wrapped in white cloth, his eyes sharp and knowing. Silence fell as he raised his staff. "Omiaji is displeased," he declared. "The river has given signs." People leaned forward, hungry for answers. He spoke of balance, of old laws, of offerings forgotten. Then his voice dropped. "What comes from the river must return to it." A murmur spread like fire. Some gasped. Others nodded slowly. Sua's heart pounded as she understood. Gbagbo did not look at her. Baba Ifalo continued, saying the river demanded what it had touched. If the village obeyed, blessings would return. Fish would fill nets again. Rain would come on time. Fear wrapped itself around reason. No one asked if the child had chosen this fate. The elders spoke of tradition and survival. When Sua tried to speak, her voice failed her. Immel sat quietly beside her, unaware that his life was being weighed like grain. The river flowed nearby, calm and patient, as if listening. That night, Sua begged. She held Gbagbo's hands, her tears wetting his palms. "He is our son," she whispered. "He has done nothing wrong." Gbagbo pulled away. "The village will starve," he said. "The river will not stop." Fear had eaten his love, leaving only duty behind. Outside, drums sounded softly, a signal of agreement. The elders had decided. Sua lay awake with Immel pressed against her chest, memorizing his warmth, his smell, the soft rise of his breath. She wondered how a mother could be asked to give away her child and still live. At dawn, Baba Ifalo came with 2 elders. No one smiled. No one argued. Immel was dressed in clean cloth. He did not cry as they walked. He only looked at his mother with calm eyes that seemed too old for his face. The path to the river felt endless. Birds were silent. Even the wind paused. When they reached the stone by Omiyaji, Sua's legs shook. She knew this place. She had washed clothes here for years. Now it waited for her child. Sua knelt by the water, clutching Immel. Her hands trembled so badly she could barely breathe. Bagbo stood behind her, stiff and silent. Baba Ifalo chanted softly, words older than memory. The river began to rise, slow and smooth, touching the stone. "It is time," the priest said. Sua kissed Immel's forehead, her tears falling onto his cheeks. "Forgive me," she whispered. The boy touched her face gently, as if comforting her. Then, with a cry torn from her chest, Sua placed him on the stone and stumbled back. Gbagbo turned away. The water climbed higher, wrapping around the boy's feet, then his knees. Immel did not scream. He did not struggle. He only watched as the river lifted him. In moments, the water closed over the stone. Silence followed. No splash, no ripple. Just the sound of the river breathing again. Sua collapsed, screaming his name, but hands pulled her away. The village returned home with heavy hearts and hopeful fear. Behind them, Omiyaji flowed on, carrying what it had taken into its depths. The next morning, fish filled the nets. Rain fell gently on dry soil. The village sighed in relief. Baba Ifalo smiled more often. People said the river had accepted the offering. Immel's name was no longer spoken. Sua moved like a shadow through her days. At night, she dreamed of water voices calling softly. She would wake with tears on her face and the sound of singing in her ears. Gbagbo avoided her grief. He threw himself into work, pretending the river had healed everything. But guilt has a way of growing roots. 5 years passed. Children who once feared Immel forgot him. New children were born. The story became a warning told in low voices. Yet the river did not forget. Sometimes, fishermen swore they saw a small figure standing on the water at dawn. When they blinked, it was gone. Wells began to taste faintly of salt. Dogs refused to drink from the river. Sua felt at first a pull in her chest, as if something was returning. She stood by the river one morning and whispered her son's name. The water rippled in reply. One misty dawn. A shout echoed along the bank. A fisherman dropped his net and ran, screaming. People gathered, pointing. There, where the river met the land, stood a boy. He looked no older than the day he was taken. His clothes were dry, yet water dripped from his feet. He stepped onto the sand without sinking. "Immel," someone whispered. The name fell like a stone. Sua pushed through the crowd, her heart breaking and healing at once. She saw his face and cried out. It was her son. Yet something was wrong. His eyes were deep and still, like the river at night. He walked toward the village, slow and calm. No one stopped him. Fear held them still. When Sua reached him and wrapped her arms around his body, cold met her skin. He did not hug her back. He did not blink. "Mother," he said, his voice smooth and distant. Joy and terror mixed in her chest. The village watched, unsure whether to celebrate or run. The river behind him rippled softly, as if laughing. Immel stayed. He slept without breathing deeply. He ate little. At night, water pooled beneath his bed. Animals avoided him. Chickens refused to cross his path. Children fell sick after touching his hand. Wells grew salty. The elders argued in whispers. Baba Ifalo's face grew pale. He knew the truth, but feared to speak it. One night, Sua dreamed clearly. She stood under the river, breathing easily. Voices surrounded her, many and one. "A child given in fear is not a gift," they said. "It is theft." She woke screaming. The next day, Immel spoke fully. He said the mermaids had kept his body but filled it with the river's will. He was not sent back as a son, but as balance. Those who chose fear would pay. The village trembled. Gbagbo fell ill first. He was dragged screaming into the river by unseen hands. Baba Ifalo drowned in shallow water, his power gone. At last, the river asked its final price. Sua walked Imel back to Omiyaji, holding his cold hand. This time, she did not run. She stayed until the water closed and the river became calm once more. Years later, the village still stands. Children play by the river, but they are warned. Elders tell this story slowly, carefully. Never give what you are meant to protect, they say. The river listens, flowing quietly, waiting. After the river took Imel the second time, a strange calm settled over Ikenoto. The air felt lighter, yet heavier in the heart. People spoke softly, as if loud voices might wake something sleeping beneath the water. Sua lived on, but she was no longer the woman she had been. She walked slowly, her eyes deep and thoughtful, like someone who had looked beyond this world and returned alone. Each morning she greeted the river, not with fear, but with respect. The elders noticed that fish returned again, not in sudden floods, but steadily, as if the river was teaching patience. Crops grew, though no one celebrated too loudly. At night, Sua sometimes heard singing, gentle and far away. She did not cry anymore. She understood that love did not always mean keeping. The village children were warned never to mock the river or speak lightly of sacrifice. Even Gbagbo's name was spoken with care, a reminder of pride's cost. The river flowed clear, reflecting the sky like an unbroken mirror. Those who listened closely said they could hear a lesson moving with the current. Steady and endless, shaping the land, and the people who lived beside it. As seasons passed, new children were born who never knew Imel. Yet they felt his story like a shadow behind them. When they played near Omiyaji, their mothers watched closely. No child was allowed near the stone where the sacrifice had happened. Moss grew thick there, hiding its sharp edges. The elders met often, not to command, but to remember. They argued less and listened more. Baba Ifalo's hut stood empty, its doorway swallowed by vines. No one claimed it. Sua became a quiet guide, teaching younger mothers to trust love over fear. She never spoke of the river mermaids directly, yet everyone knew she had heard their voices. Sometimes, travelers passed through and asked why the village treated the river like a living elder. The people would only say, "It has taken and returned what it wished." At dusk, the water often glowed softly, reflecting the sky in colors too deep for words. Some nights, a figure seemed to stand just beneath the surface, watching. No one pointed. No one screamed. The village had learned that some truths must be respected in silence, or the river would remind them again. One year, a great drought came to nearby lands, but Ikenoto did not starve. The river narrowed, yet never dried. This was not seen as a reward, but as balance restored. Elders told the children that the river was neither kind nor cruel. It was honest. It answered what was given to it. The children listened wide-eyed, especially when the story reached the unwanted boy. They asked why no one saved him. The elders paused before answering. "Fear makes cowards of good people," one would say. Sua, now gray-haired, sometimes sat by the river and spoke aloud. She thanked it for teaching her truth, even through pain. She did not ask for Imel back. She knew better. At times, the water rippled gently at her words. The village grew known for its caution and care. No child was ever called unwanted again. Even weak or strange children were protected fiercely. Parents remembered the cost of forgetting love. At night, when the moon was full, the river sang softly, and those who heard it felt both comforted and warned, as if the song carried memory itself. As I tell you this, children, know that stories like this do not end neatly. They continue in choices made long after the last tears fall. One evening, a boy from another village wandered too close to Omiyaji. He laughed and threw stones, mocking the quiet water. The river did not rise. It did not roar. It only pulled gently, enough to frighten him. He ran screaming, and his parents later came to thank the elders for the warning carved into fear. The river did not need sacrifices anymore. It needed respect. Sua passed away peacefully not long after, her face calm. She was buried facing the river. On the day of her burial, the water was still, smooth as glass. Some said they saw two shadows beneath it, standing side by side. No one confirmed it. The village mourned her deeply, for she had become a living reminder of courage learned too late. Her story was added to Imel's, not to soften it, but to complete it. Love lost, love returned, love released, years turned into decades. New elders took their places, but the lesson remained unchanged. When arguments arose, someone would say, "Remember the river." That was enough. The children grew into adults who taught their own children gently. Ikenoto became a place where strangers felt watched but safe. Fishermen still whispered prayers before casting nets. They thanked the river for what it gave and accepted what it withheld. No one demanded any more. Some nights, when fog rolled thick over the water, faint laughter could be heard, like children playing far away. The braver ones said the river mermaids were dancing. Others said it was only water and wind. Both answers were allowed. That was the difference now. Truth did not need to be forced. The river had taught them patience. And so the story lived, not as fear alone, but as wisdom earned at a terrible price. You may wonder, children, why the river returned Immel at all if it meant to take him again. The elders say it was so the village could see what it had done. Pain unseen teaches nothing. Pain faced changes hearts. The returned Immel was not cruelty. He was a mirror. Those who could not bear their reflection were taken by it. Those who could learn it. Even now, when the river swells during storms, people stay indoors and speak kindly to one another. No child sleeps hungry if food can be shared. The river listens always. It does not forget names, especially the names spoken with love or fear. Immel's name is spoken softly now, not as a curse, but as a warning and a prayer. The river flows on, older than memory, younger than tomorrow. It waits for nothing, yet responds to everything. That is its law. Sometimes travelers ask if the story is true. The elders smile and ask them to drink from the river. The water tastes clean, with the faintest hint of salt. Truth leaves a flavor, they say. No one laughs after that. The riverbank stone is now fully covered by moss and flowers. Children are told not to disturb it. They obey, not out of fear, but respect. The river has become teacher, judge, and witness. And we, who live beside it, have become better listeners. This is how stories shape villages, and how villages survive. Remember this well, the river did not want a child. It wanted honesty. When fear chose for love, the water answered in its own way. What came back was not a child, because what was given was not love. That is the heart of it. The river only returns what it is offered. Nothing more. Nothing less. So, when you grow and make choices of your own, think of Immel. Think of Sua's tears and courage. Think of Gbagbo's pride and Baba Ifalo's lies. Think of a village that learned too late, yet learned enough to change. The river still flows. It always will. I have told you this not to frighten you, but to remind you. The world listens more than you think. Water remembers. Love matters. And if one day you stand by a river and feel watched, do not run. Ask yourself first what you have offered it in your heart. That is all the river ever asks. The rest is choice. And choice is where every story truly begins. Now go, and remember.